Well, as most of you know, we just had the Olympic Games in Rio. And whether or not you're into sports, it's amazing to see these incredible athletes in action. Many world records were broken at this year's Olympics, with athletes competing at seemingly superhuman strength and speed, stronger and faster than Olympians in the past could have ever dreamed possible. And most of these athletes work their entire lives to get to the Olympic Games. While most young kids are playing video games and eating fast food and going to school dances, these athletes are dragging themselves at the crack of dawn to the gym or the track or the swimming pool. And they train for hours each day, year after year after year, oftentimes living apart from their family members and friends. There's a lot of dedication and sacrifice that comes with attaining greatness. During the Olympics this year, they did a segment on Bella Caroli, the tough and gruff gymnastics coach who defected from Romania in the 1980s and who helped coach the U.S. women's gymnastics team to multiple gold medals. Now, you know that the U.S. women's gymnastic team is mostly made up of girls. They're really just 14 or 15 years old. And in the segment, one of the girls asked Coach Caroli if she could take a few hours off from training to go to her sister's Sweet 16 party. And Coach Caroli yells at her and says, "No family and no fun if you want to be on the winning team." That's tough. Those are tough words. Coach Caroli didn't want to sugarcoat it. He wanted to let them know, you have to put everything into this. You've got to keep your eye on the prize. Well, to me, that is what today's gospel message is all about. Jesus isn't sugarcoating it with us either. Jesus is saying there is a great reward. The reward is a rich, full life, a life of peace and love and joy and freedom. The prize isn't a gold medal, but it's the attainment of the Christ consciousness for ourselves. It's experiencing the kingdom of heaven on earth. That's the prize. Now, Jesus is our coach. He's our trainer. He's our teacher. And his words in today's gospel are just as tough as Coach Caroli's was to his athletes. Jesus said, "Whoever seeks to follow me must deny his very self, take up his own cross every day, and follow in my steps." In today's gospel, Jesus says, if you want to be my disciple, you must hate your mother and your father. You must hate your spouse, and you must hate your children. You must hate your very life. Very strong words. Jesus uses the word hate. Now, what does Jesus mean by this? We know Jesus was a man of great love. He was a man who said, love your enemies. So I can't imagine that he meant that we're supposed to hate our loved ones. Jesus is using very strong language because he really wants to make clear that following his way of life, if you really want to say that you're a follower of Jesus, that you are a Christian, you have to commit to this 100%. So he makes it very clear in today's gospel message that this is going to require everything that you have. Now, many of us say, I'm a Christian. I go to church on Sunday. I pray. Jesus is saying that is not enough. The spiritual life has to be your top priority. It's got to be the first thing on your list. For most of us, that isn't the case. For most of us, our first priority is our family, our spouse, our children, our job. God comes kind of maybe lower than that on our to-do list of things each day. Jesus is very strong in this gospel because he's saying you have to make that first, above mother and father, above children, above spouse, above job. That's got to be first. If an Olympic athlete trained just one morning a week, Sunday morning, for 1 hour, they would not make it to the Olympics. And if all you do for your spiritual life is this, you're not going to make it to Mount Olympus. You're not going to experience the kingdom of heaven on earth. You're not going to attain the Christ consciousness. You're not going to win the medal because it's not enough. You have to want it so badly and put everything that you have into it. The writer G.K. Chesterton said, "It's not that Christianity has been tried and found lacking. The trouble with Christianity is that it's never really been tried. It's never really been tried. We may say we're Christian, come here on Sundays, wear crosses around our necks. We've never really tried to do what Jesus did. You may say you're a follower of Jesus, but have you really fully committed yourself to the instructions of Jesus?" It's not that Jesus wasn't clear about his instructions. He was totally clear. He was a great coach. The reason that we are not following it 100% is because it's hard. It's too difficult. Most people don't make it to the Olympics because it's really hard. And nobody wants to put in that amount of work. And most people, even those who call themselves Christian, never fully experience the rich, full life that Jesus promised because we're not willing to do the work. It is much easier to just sit in the stands and cheer the Olympic athlete. Let's cheer and admire the person who put in all that effort. And you see the stands at the Olympics, and you see the millions of viewers who watch these games all around the world. One of the highest rated television events. We want to watch and cheer these people and admire them. And that to me is what Christianity has become. A group of people in the stands, a group of people in the pews who cheer and worship the one guy who crossed the finish line rather than competing in the race for yourself. Father Richard Rohr, who wrote our words of integration this morning, who we're going to go visit on our church trip to New Mexico in the fall, he said, Jesus does not want fans. He wants followers. Jesus doesn't want fans. Yay, Jesus! Doesn't want that. You think Jesus wanted to be worshipped? Where in any of his instructions did he say, worship me? He said, follow me. He wanted us to do exactly as he did. And he said, if you do this, you will achieve what I've achieved. Most of us say, well, that's not possible. Not for me. Well, then you're calling Jesus a liar. Because Jesus said, and these are his own words, he said, everything I've done, you can do. And then he added, these things and greater. We can become the Christ. That was Jesus' purpose for being, to give us the instructions to do it. Not to sit in the stands and worship him, but to do what he did. Most of us don't want to do it because it's too hard. It's much easier to be a fan than to be a follower. But Christianity is not supposed to be a spectator sport. Jesus put in the work. We have no idea what Jesus was doing from the age of 12 to the age of 30. But I believe he was in training. We know it tells us in the Gospels that Jesus spent 40 days and 40 nights in the desert before he began his ministry. This is not a literal number. 40 is a metaphysical, spiritual number. And what it symbolizes is a time of great testing. Many, many years. So it's not literally 40 days. It's just a long period of time of death and spiritual rebirth. Jesus was out training. And in the desert, he wrestled with the devil. Again, not a literal person that he was wrestling with. Metaphysically, it meant he was wrestling with his demons. He was overcoming his ego. And that's what he was trying to get us to do. He was training us to do that. So, what does that look like for us? If we are really committed to doing this, not just being a fan, but being a follower, what do we have to do? Well, this is what our training program looks like. It means each and every day we have to train for hours. That training is prayer, meditation, mindfulness practices. That training is a retraining of our brains to stop focusing our thinking on worry and anxiety and negativity, and to start focusing on the positive, start focusing on love and light. Like the Olympic athletes, our training is going to require great focus and great sacrifice. The sacrifice involves going out and serving people who are strangers. The sacrifice requires being nice to people who are not nice to us. The sacrifice requires forgiving people who have really wounded us. We have to put God first. The spiritual life has to be your top priority. If you want to experience this rich, full life that Jesus promised, a life of great love and peace and joy. This weekend is Labor Day. We're celebrating the worker. We're celebrating the people in this country who sacrificed and worked really hard to achieve the American dream. I know we have it in us to do the work if you want to achieve the spiritual dream. Our spiritual dream is manifesting the kingdom of heaven here on earth. Now, our grandparents and great-grandparents, maybe they didn't achieve the American dream, but they did it so that we would have it. Maybe you and I, in our physical lifetime, will not see the kingdom of heaven here on earth, but we're making the sacrifices and doing the hard work so that future generations will experience it. That's why we're doing it. We're not doing these things. We're not going through the training to please our coach. We heard Richard Rohr say this morning, you don't have to do anything to earn God's favor. You already have it. You're doing these things so you can awaken. That's the purpose of the spiritual life. To awaken from this mass hypnotic culture that is so success-driven. To awaken from the delusions of the world. To be like Jesus and Buddha, the enlightened ones who were awake. So, today, on this Labor Day weekend, let us commit ourselves to doing the work that it takes. Jesus promised that if we do, we will experience a new identity, a new life. Not in the next lifetime, in this one. New horizons are in view. So let us open our eyes so that we can focus on the light, so that we can manifest the Christ, so that we can bring forth the kingdom of heaven here on earth. Namaste.